Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on the practicals of job searching. So I'm Tracy Adams from Ten2Two, and I'm going to host it today, but I'm delighted that my lovely colleague, Jo Gregory, my partner in crime and fellow director, she'll be taking us through the presentation. So I think she's got the harder job tonight. In case you don't already know about us, Ten2Two are experts in part-time and flexible recruitment. So if you are looking for a flexible role, make sure you're registered with us by visiting the website. We've got 30 minutes for the presentation. It's quite a pacey run through, followed by 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. Now, if you've got any questions, pop them into the Q&A box you'll see at the bottom of your screens, and they are anonymous. So please don't worry, ask anything you like. We'll either bring them up as we go through, if it's relevant, or at the end. And we've got 10 minutes at the end where I can bombard Jo with a few questions. There may be common themes that we can talk about, but pop them all in there. And if we don't get around to answering them all, then we will answer them in a follow-up document or follow-up email. So please just fire away. Now, we've got a recording of this and we will send you the recording out. So don't worry about writing loads of notes. So I think that's the admin done. Jo, are you happy to get going? And I'll hand over to you.
Absolutely. I thought we were going to go back to your travel days, though. You're going to do the emergency exits.
And your
doesn't
hands
really work
disappear,
on
so
Zoom, does it?
It doesn't.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that, Tracy. Just to quickly introduce myself, I'm Jo Gregory with Ten2Two. You've probably seen mine and Tracy's names on emails and various other bits and pieces. But we're delighted to have you here this evening, and I am going to take you through, there it is.
That's what your presentation.
A presentation. You can see how comfortable I am with this. It's great. Right, hopefully everyone can see that. So,
just pop it on your present option, Jo. Just pop it on the present option. There we go. Yeah. That's it. Cool.
There we go.
Brilliant. Yes.
Technology, don't you just love it?
Yeah.
Tonight we're going to be talking about the practicals for job searching. So this is quite a broad subject. As Tracy said, it's quite pacey. We go through quite a lot of information. Some of you will be in this process at the moment and will be more familiar with it. Some of you won't have looked for a job for a very long time. So this might be a nice refresher as to the different routes that there are, the different processes that you might follow. And obviously things are always changing with technology and world events. Things change. So hopefully this will give you an insight as to what the market's like at the moment. Tracy and I and the rest of the team are dealing with this day in, day out. So we like to think that we've got a general sense of what's going on. So the agenda for today, the first point that we're going to go through is a quick update on the market. Second point is job finding channels, so the different ways in which you can find a job. Third point, processes. So again, there's lots and lots of variation in processes, but there are general themes that are generally kind of stuck to. So we'll go through the process for the hirers and for yourselves. A quick summary, and then as Tracy said, if you've got any questions, we will have time to go through those at the end if we haven't covered them in the presentation. So please do pop them in the Q&A. So the market, it's always changing, the recruitment market. It never stays the same for very long. The latest figures on the ONS show that there's been a drop in vacancies. Now, post-pandemic, there was a bit of a bounce and there was a huge rise in vacancies. That seems to be slowing down. That seems to be petering out. We think it's probably reached its end. And whilst vacancies do remain high and unemployment remains low, so it generally is still a candidate market, we do see signs that that might be coming to an end. That doesn't necessarily mean it will happen overnight, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to slip completely into an employer's market. It just means that there might not be as many roles available for people to pick and choose from. Some other basic stats: more than 80% of employers are reporting difficulty in finding the talent that they need. So there is still in the UK a talent shortage. And small businesses are saying that finding the right people is the second biggest issue after rising costs. And we all know what an issue rising costs are at the moment. So small businesses, or all businesses, are facing those issues just as you and I are. So what are we seeing on a daily basis? What kind of activity, what feel are we getting? Overall, things are very, very buoyant. As Tracy said, and as most of you know, we are a specialist agency. We do specialise in part-time and flexibility, and we're pleased to say that things are buoyant, because that hasn't always been the case in our niche. There is still uncertainty in some sectors. The world feels like quite an uncertain place for a number of people at the moment, and that again is felt by businesses as well as individuals. The shortage of candidates varies by sector. So again, some sectors have more of a talent issue than others. Flexible working is much more widely understood than I think it ever has been before. And that is partly thanks to the pandemic. One of the things that it brought us was a more open-minded response to things like remote working. So it has been adopted more widely, and other types of flexibility are more widely available now than they were when 10-2 started 16 years ago. We've still got a way to go. You know, it's not perfect. It's not as widely available as we would like. And we're still championing that on your guys' behalf, but it's getting there. We're seeing lots and lots and lots of positive signs. However, one thing we have really noticed is the gap widening between what employers are able and willing to offer and what candidates are able and willing to accept. So the biggest tip that we have for you guys out of all of this really is to be as open and flexible as possible. Now, we're not saying to put yourself in a position where you then cannot deliver against what you agree to. So make sure you know your parameters. If you can only work 20 hours a week, you can only work 20 hours a week, you know. However, if you can be more flexible with the benefits package, if you can be more flexible with going into the office a little bit more regularly, do try and be as open-minded as you can. Most of the employers that we work with are very open to discussion, they're open to negotiation, and we work in-depthly, is that a word? With those clients before the role even goes to market, to make sure that it is an attractive yet sustainable position. So yeah, open-mindedness is the key. My notes printed out here, so if I keep looking down, I'm very sorry. Okay, routes to finding a job. These are all of the key routes. So apologies again, if you're in this process at the moment, you may well already be aware of this, but if you haven't looked for a job for a while, it's a nice refresher. So I'm going to go through each of these. I won't take too long. So yeah, agency. Agency is quite a formal way of looking for a job. You don't normally stumble onto an agency's books. It's normally something that you proactively go ahead and do. It's a focused and thorough approach. It is different from a job board. Most agencies will have professionals who are then representing you. So you will have a salesperson there doing your job for you and doing that elevator pitch, making sure that you're being pitched into the right company for you, as well as you being the right person for them. Guidance and coaching. Agencies can often provide guidance and coaching when it comes to interview skills, when it comes to negotiation for the role itself. They can be sector and location specific. So you might have an agency on your local high street who will deal with your town, or like us, it might be a niche, whereas it's part-time and flexible. If you're in PR, there are some PR specialists, so on and so forth. Agencies normally have a slightly smaller selection of roles, so it does help you with that overwhelm of job searching if you can tighten some of your parameters. So again, if you're only looking for part-time, come to a part-time agency. If you're looking for a job in law, go to a law agency. Most of the time in an agency, a real person will be looking at your details. So here at 10-2, not just because we're scared of tech, but generally, because we're lovely people, we do all look at your CV. You know, we will cast a human eye over your details to assess your relevance for a particular role. And a lot of agencies do still operate in that way. Job boards. This is where the tech comes into it a little bit more. There's lots and lots of different job boards that you can use. Again, there are some very generic ones: Total Jobs, Reed, Indeed, blah, blah, blah. They're listed there for you. LinkedIn can operate as a job board. They do have formal job settings. They've also got the slightly more surreptitious ones like we do. We advertise without it actually being a LinkedIn role. And there are specialist job boards as well. So the one that we've got there is CW Jobs, and you'll have to forgive me for a minute because I'm going to have to look what they specialize in. And I don't know. Or Flexible Working People, who we work very closely with, and they are a job board who specialize in flexible work, flexible jobs. Google Jobs is a relatively new one, and they're an aggregator, which means they basically go out and scan all of the internet and pull that information together. So it's a really good Google search for a job. And you can obviously use different terminology to pull through the jobs that you're interested in. A tip for using these, you can get really easily overwhelmed with the volume of opportunities there are out there. Jobs can be duplicated across different job boards. They might be then through an agency, they might be direct. It's massively overwhelming. So again, we would strongly advise that you use the criteria of the job that you're looking for to really narrow down the number of job boards that you're engaging with. Most of them will have the opportunity to set up alerts. And then, as you, I'm sure, know, in your email account, you can then get those alerts sent to a folder, and then you can choose a time to sit and look at them. It just means that they're more contained and less likely to be bombarding you all the time, so you don't get into a state of overwhelm.
Yeah. Joe, did CW Jobs, I think, is one of Deb's favourites, and it was a tech one. Sorry, I was writing a direct answer to someone. So it's a tech.
Thanks.
It's a tech one.
Yeah, I knew that. Another formal way of approaching people is online direct. Now, this is for a particular company that you might want to work for, or a number of particular companies. Obviously, it's a much more focused way of applying for a job. When I was little, I wanted to work at Disney, and I think I was about 8 years old when I wrote to them asking if I could work for them. They politely said no. But you can go onto an employer's website. If they're a large employer, they will probably have some sort of technology behind their website that means you can register for job alerts. Otherwise, you might find an email address for an HR person or a manager, and you can email them if you're really keen to target a company directly. Businesses will often use job boards, or they might go to agencies. So it might be that your response is, this is where we tend to advertise, please revert there. Obviously, the volume is going to be much lower if you're targeting specific companies, but it is, I think, quite a nice way to job search if you are quite focused on where you want to work, be that the sector, be it companies that are aligned with your values. It can mean you definitely don't get overwhelmed. You might be a little bit disappointed though. Yes. And the last formal process, slightly less common, but it does still happen, is headhunting. So historically, people have seen headhunting as something that only the very senior of us get involved in or are headhunted. That's not always the case. Often you can be headhunted because you've got specific skills or maybe even specific experience. Maybe you work for the competitor of the hiring business, and they really want to be able to use your talent in their organization. Headhunting can be direct from an employer themselves, or it might be from an agency. So if you are actively looking, it's worth making sure that your CV with agencies is up to date and as strong as possible, and also that your LinkedIn profile, because LinkedIn is a sea of bounty for headhunters. Yeah. There's a lovely feature that you can use on LinkedIn, preempt the question because it came up last time, where you can say, open to
Oh,
work, something like that.
yeah.
So obviously it's one that you want to be cautious with. If you are in a role at the moment, you might not necessarily want your current employer to know that you're open for work. But if you are actively looking and it is open knowledge, then that's quite a nice feature. That means that any agency that does look at your details will know that you'll probably welcome a call from them.
Yeah.
Okay, slightly more informal routes. The offline direct approach. This is slightly less common, but I used to do it. I wonder if Tracy did. Actually printing out your CV and going and giving it to somebody.
Yes,
Posting it.
it.
So again, I mean, this might not be offline. This might, it kind of correlates the whole idea of just emailing directly to an HR manager, or, you know, making yourself known to that company. Again, it's very, very targeted, but it still does happen. Make sure, if you're going to do this, that all of your information is very, very strongly targeted. Your CV is tailored, your cover letter is tailored, and that you're making sure you find out as much specific information about that particular business as possible. So the names of the people that you're approaching. Businesses love a bit of flattery, so any kind of exciting PR or nominations or prizes they've won or anything like that, make reference to it in your application, because that will get you attention. It's much less common these days to go about it in this way, but it still does work.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very common offline way of job hunting, and that is through your own network. So those of you who are in an incestuous type of industry where everybody knows everybody, you'll already be very, very comfortable with using your network. It doesn't have to be your work network, though. It is amazing how many people I speak to who found out about a job through somebody on the playground or at nursery pickup or at the park. So if you're looking for a job and you're comfortable, just talk to people about it, you know, open up a conversation, find out what Jill at pickup does, and if the company she's working for have got any vacancies. You know, it's a great conversation starter. It's a great way to network and to open up your professional network. And although obviously you would want to come through Ten2Two, yeah, people at the school gates or in your circles, for whatever reason it is that you're looking for part-time work, it may well be that they're in the same position and sourcing part-time work for themselves, and they might be able to help you with your search. So the hiring process. I feel like we're whizzing through this. How are we doing for time?
Got about 10 minutes left, Jo. So yeah, about 10 minutes
Okay.
left.
Bear with me. Okay. So we thought it would be good to take a quick look at the process that a hiring manager goes through. Now, obviously, the process that you go through will mirror this. But again, unless you've worked in HR or unless you've been a manager who's recruited internally, you might not understand this process. And sometimes it just brings a little bit of a light to the experience that you have if you know what goes on behind the scenes. So once a need has been identified, a business will put together a job description. Now, depending on the size of the business, that might be an existing document, or a lot of time businesses will come to us to get us to help with those job descriptions. And one of the things Ten2Two are very proud of is our expertise in helping businesses really, really craft and shape genuinely part-time roles. It's a real minefield out there, and I know a lot of you will have had experience of trying to fit a role into part-time hours, or a part-time role ending up growing into something bigger. So we do work very, very closely with hiring managers and businesses in making sure that the roles that we work on are genuinely part-time if they're advertised as such. The business will then, once they've got the job description, they will then decide on their channels. So some will use formal channels that we've already gone through. Some will go through their own networks. There is no set, they have to do this or they have to do that. You know, there's sometimes people have these thoughts that businesses have to advertise internally, or they have to advertise for a certain number of time. that just isn't the case. The businesses can choose where they want to go to and where they want to advertise. Once applicants start coming in, these may be reviewed by a number of different audiences. So again, depending on the channel, will depend on who or what does that first sift of your CV. A lot of recruitment software out there that often sits in the back end of a job page, for example, will have AI attached to it now. So that will be able to scan your CV and pull out relevant words that the recruiter or the client are looking for, therefore shortlisting you purely based on preset keywords that they're hoping to achieve. As I said before, if an agency is involved, then there's a much, much higher chance that your CV will be reviewed by human eyes. And those decisions will be made on a slightly wider basis. If it's being reviewed by the client or even by some agencies, it may be being reviewed by quite a junior member of the team, and they again may have been tasked by looking for specific keywords. It may be that it's reviewed by the managing director of a small company. Whoever it's going to be viewed by, the key messages when putting together a strong CV are always the same. And we do run a separate webinar and provide additional information on writing CVs. But the biggest piece of advice that we could give you is to make sure you're tailoring your CV for each and every application. Now that sounds very laborious, doesn't have to be. You can have a master CV and then just strip out the irrelevant information, or maybe put in some keywords for each application, or even changing the order in which the bullet points are listed under a particular job can sometimes make sure it's tailored enough to catch the interest of whoever is reading it. The keywords are so relevant for the AI process or for maybe the more junior person reviewing your CV, and they can often be mirrored from the job description. So you'll know from reading the job description what those keywords are. They will jump out of the page at you when you're applying for the role. There will then be a shortlisting process gone through. So hopefully your CV and some others will be shortlisted, and they will then invite you for interview. That interview can take a number of different guises. The most common thing that we're seeing at the moment is using remote technology, like we're on this evening, for first stage interviews. Using Zoom or Teams or Google Meet just means that there is a nice, easy, still quite personal way of meeting a candidate, or you meeting a business without needing to travel into the offices. Obviously, this is quite a different experience than an in-person interview. And again, Ten2Two and most other agencies will be able to coach you on remote interviewing and making sure that you're still presenting yourself in the very best way possible. Yeah. Obviously, it goes without saying, be as flexible as possible with the times that you're available, but make sure that those times do work for you. So it's incredibly important that you're in the right environment, that you're in the right mindset, and that you haven't got any distractions during that interview time, so you can really give the best impression of yourself. And again, we have a separate webinar that might be very useful, that we can link in when we follow up on presenting yourself online, and also general interview tips. We then get through to, hopefully, the offer process. Throughout this process, you've either been dealing entirely with an agency or maybe directly with the recruiter themselves. You will have been super polite, you will have been thanking them, you will have been giving off the very best impression of yourself, and that shouldn't stop at this point. The negotiation doesn't have to be a hard and uncomfortable process. If you've gone through an agency, the agency are there to support you in that negotiation, and most of the time are quite skilled negotiators. They'll also have an existing relationship with the hiring business, and may be able to have slightly different conversations than you might be able to. Obviously, if you've gone directly to a hiring business, then you might need to have those discussions yourself, but they don't have to be unpleasant discussions. And hopefully through that targeted approach, you'll have decided what your parameters are, and they will have been in line with your original application. As we said at the beginning, with the market the way it is, we would encourage you to be as open-minded as possible, not to overpromise and set yourself in a situation that's going to be unachievable, but also not to be so fixed in your requirements that you miss out on a great opportunity because of a morning in the office, if you can make that work. Hopefully by this point you've had the offer, you've negotiated yourself a brilliant package, you're super excited, and then you get to start your new job. That process in itself can be quite daunting. Again, I'm going to keep obviously telling in using an agency. We have helped lots and lots and lots of people get back into the workplace, and that little while that between the offer and the start date can be really, really daunting. But again, Ten2Two are very, very used to and very skilled in supporting you through that process, helping you get yourself ready. We have yet another webinar on your first, I think it's 60 days, can't remember. But making sure that, you know, your confidence is up there and you're ready and you feel organized, and you make a real success of that start. This is all the same as what we just did, but the other way around. So key things that you need to think about in your job search: allocate time for it. It's not something that you can do, you know, for 5 minutes in the car waiting for Rosie to finish dance or whatever it might be. You need to you know, give it some time, give it some attention. Set your criteria. Again, not so rigid that you're missing out on a great experience or a great offer, but not so wide that you're completely overwhelmed by all of the things that you're applying for. Make sure you understand the titles and the skills. So different businesses use different job titles. Do some research, speak to people, understand what it is that you're applying for. I mean, generic titles like office manager can mean so many different things and have so many different areas of responsibility. It's really important that you read the information that the employing body is giving you as to whether it's actually the role that you want to go for. Skills as well, acronyms can be used all of the time. Make sure that you understand what they are. And sometimes, ladies out there, we have a tendency not to apply for things if we don't tick all of the boxes. Ten2Two will strongly advise you just to apply for it anyway. Not a business will put out a person spec of the absolute ideal candidate, and they will write everything they could have ever possibly wanted in a person spec. They never actually believe that they will find that person. So the one thing that you're missing might be the one thing they don't really care about anyway. So go for it. Create your base CV and cover letter. As we said before, have a master CV that you can then tailor and amend to that particular application. Choose the agencies and the job sites that you're going to work with and register with them. Make sure your details are up to date and develop a relationship with them if there is a human involved in the process. When you found the job that you want to apply for, tailor your CV and cover letter. Make sure, again, you're going through that mirroring exercise with the keywords, and that you are bringing out the very best in your documents for that application. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date. Even if you're not using LinkedIn to job search, the people who are reviewing your information may well be using LinkedIn to have a little bit of a sneaky look at you, and it will just look better if your details there are shiny and up to date.
Yep. And
reflect your CV as well. I'm not saying you have to tailor your LinkedIn profile to match your CV, but hopefully there won't be any or too many differences in the CV you're putting forward. You can ask something, Tracy.
As I say, it's 8:30, Jo.
Sorry. Reach out, as we said, talk to your network, go out there and ask the questions. Don't be afraid, unless you're keeping it secret from your current employer, and then be slightly afraid. And keep track of the applications that you've made. There is no harm in chasing through an application. If you haven't heard back from an employer or an agency, there is no harm in dropping them a note and trying to find out what's going on. It might not be anything negative, it might be that they just haven't got round to reviewing your CV, or that the closing date for that particular role hasn't passed yet. So keep a note of who you've applied with and how you've applied, and make professional approaches to follow that on. Remain patient and positive. Nobody likes a grumpy job searcher. So positive smile and lots of patience in the process will get you far.
And it is a process. You have to remember it is a process, and it's not personal.
Yes.
It's a process.
So this is just a quick summary of everything that we've just gone through, but we are running over time, so I'm not going to go through it all again. All of this will be sent to you. So a recording of today, a copy of the slides, and a follow-up document. So hopefully you've found this information useful. And now we have some questions.
Yes, we've had some interesting questions. So I've got the first one. I'd say this has come up a couple of times in the list just now. So someone's saying they've registered with a few agencies and only one has ever replied, even though they've followed up a few times and feel really frustrated. And actually someone else has answered us a similar thing. Any tips?
I completely understand your frustration. It's very, very difficult. And unfortunately, recruitment agencies don't have the best reputation. Most agencies won't do it intentionally. It won't be something that they mean to do. And as Tracy said a minute ago, try not to take it personally. Tips, I would follow up. I would make sure that you are developing relationships. I always liken it to the relationship that you'd have with an estate agent. Not that I want to be thought of as an estate agent, but if you're looking for a house, you make friends with the estate agent. So again, I can try and sell 10-2 at this point. We do try our best to get back to everybody who gets in touch with us, but even we sometimes let emails or voicemails slip through the cracks. Obviously, we never intend to do that, and I'm sure other agencies never intend to do it. So do try not to take it personally. But as I said, if you keep a track of the applications that you've made and just systematically make sure that you're following up on those, then hopefully you will receive a response. And if you don't, maybe it wasn't meant to be. Yeah,
check spam folder, things like that as well, because we do know some of ours go into spam sometimes.
Yeah,
so
that is a very good point as well. Yeah. A lot of the time agencies will be using technology to farm their communications, and that technology can mean that they're more likely spammed by your email provider.
Someone is asking, I think you touched on this, but about social media. So do employers look at social media as part of their screening process?
So you never will know. Some do and some don't. Our advice would be, obviously we don't want to police your social media, and you don't want to feel that you can't use your social media for its exact purpose of being sociable. However, if you are actively job searching, I would just be mindful that employers might do a Google search on you or look at social media. Obviously, accounts can be made private. You can do what you can to protect your privacy. I would advise not doing that on LinkedIn. If you're actively job searching, make sure people can see your LinkedIn profile. But anything that is there for more social activity, you can either, again, make it private or just make sure that you're keeping it as professional as possible. For at least the first few scrolls.
Fun is fine. Fun and having fun is fine. And then there's, when you step over a certain line on Facebook or something, and I have known clients to come to me and say, we've just looked at someone's Facebook page and it's a bit, so they do look, clearly. Not all of them have time or want to. So,
but you just don't know. So it's better to play it safe.
Yeah. And quite an interesting question here about culture. So, obviously you're doing all your research, you're doing your job boards. How can you find out about the culture of a company as part of your research before taking on the job?
Brilliant question. Culture is becoming so important for job searchers. it's almost more important than sector now for a lot of people who are looking for a job. They really want to be in line with the culture of the employer. They want it to be a culture that they're comfortable in, and that varies for everybody. You know, there is no right or wrong answer. It's very individual. There are a lot of ways that you can find out about the culture of an organization, one of which is do exactly what we were just talking about and flip that social media thing, and look at their social media. So, you know, look at the type of information that they're sharing about themselves, look at their website, look at whether they've got vision and values communicated on their website. You can tell a lot about an organization through the types of additional activities that they're involved in. So they might have some charity work that they get involved in. They might have some employee testimonials on their website if they've got a recruitment portal. I don't know if some of you know about a website called Glassdoor. It's a website where people can praise or otherwise their employers. Again, you do have to take it with a pinch of salt, because as with reviews of products, people don't tend to go on unless they've either got something absolutely wonderful or absolutely awful to say. But that can be a useful insight into the culture of an organization.
Yeah.
And the other thing to say is, if you don't feel as though you have fully grasped a culture and you are offered an interview, you can ask about it at the interview. You know, there is absolutely nothing stopping you from asking about their culture and asking them all the questions that you want. The interview is very much a two-way process. And giving them the opportunity to share their culture with you is something that I'm sure that they would welcome.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. We've had, I don't know that we've got time to do much on this, and I'm happy to just quickly throw some ideas out. We've had quite a lot of questions about LinkedIn. I'm feeling there is a webinar we need to do on LinkedIn, because we've had quite a lot, actually. I think the majority, loads have been on LinkedIn. So I'm happy to just throw in a few answers to these that are on here. So I think, really, how do you use LinkedIn on you know, your job search? And you've talked about it a bit. I think everybody, if you are actively looking and don't mind people knowing you're looking, like you haven't got a current employer you're bothered about, put your open to work badge on. Be active on LinkedIn, make sure it's up to date, connect with people, make comments, pass comments, you know, praise people, interact, seek out the companies you like and think are great, and connect with people there. I mean, there's so many things we could talk about with LinkedIn if you're job hunting, and it's probably a more detailed question for another time, and we can put some thoughts on a piece of paper tomorrow and send it out in an email. So but that's a key one, I think, for a lot of people, LinkedIn.
And it is an absolute treasure trove for job hunters, but the only kind of warning that I would put in place is that overwhelm. A lot of people come to us who have just been completely bamboozled by the volume of stuff that's out there. And LinkedIn can be like that sometimes. It can be a bit of a rabbit warren, as also
just about to say rabbit warren. It's been so long. It's the same with any social media.
You can kind of get lost zooming through it. So definitely focus on keeping your presence updated. And yes, be targeted and contact people, you know, apply for the jobs that you are interested in that come through. But use it as a tool rather than allowing yourself to kind of get lost in it. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, Joe, that's 10 minutes. That's more than 10 minutes. That's 22. Now, we have had more questions. We're not going to have time to go through them all. I'm really sorry, but we will follow up with an email which answers. I've answered a few as we've been going along that I could do quickly, and we'll follow up tomorrow with an email with as many questions answered as we can. So I think that we're going to have to draw it to a close. We'll follow up tomorrow. We'll also send the recording out. It'll probably be early next week. So anything else to say, Joe, before we go?
Just thank you all ever so much. There's really nice little emojis of thumbs up and things going up the screen at the moment. It's lovely. I've not seen that before. Thank you all so much for
Yeah.
giving us your evening this evening. We really, really do appreciate your time.
Yeah.
We love our candidates, and if any of you have got any follow-up questions, we're
Yeah.
always open and willing to have conversations or to answer emails, so please do get in touch. And the very, very best of luck to you. For those of you who are job searching, it's not easy. We know it's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
We are here to help, but similarly, outside of us,
Yeah.
we do wish you the very, very best of luck.
Thank you, everybody, and I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much.